Have you ever asked yourself why the United States does not support a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip? It's a question that's been echoing across the globe, especially in light of recent events. From descendants of Holocaust survivors protesting in New York to former President Trump threatening to strip student visas from those supporting Palestinians, the narrative surrounding the Israel-Palestine conflict has been intense and multifaceted. Each development seems to add another layer to the complex tapestry of international relations, pulling the United States further into the fray. To understand this, we must delve into the past and unravel the roots of the US's involvement in this conflict. The US's stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict didn't emerge overnight. Our journey through time begins in the late 40s when the United States was among the first nations to recognize the State of Israel, shortly after its establishment in 1948. This recognition set the tone for the relationship that would evolve over the coming decades, characterized by strong political, military, and economic support for Israel. Now, let's fast forward to 1967 and the Six-Day War. This marked a pivotal moment in the history of the conflict. The US's support for Israel became more pronounced after this war, as Israel emerged as a significant military power in the Middle East. This support was not only ideological, but also strategic, as the United States sought to counterbalance Soviet influence in the region during the Cold War. Fast forward again to the 90s, a time of tentative hope. The Oslo Accords, brokered partly by the US, marked the first face-to-face agreement between the government of Israel and the Palestine Liberation Organization. The US's role as a mediator in the conflict was solidified, further entangling its policies with the Israel-Palestine issue. In the new millennium, the situation has become increasingly complex. Successive US administrations have grappled with the conflict, with varying degrees of engagement and success. The recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital by the Trump administration marked a significant shift in US policy, sparking controversy and further complicating peace efforts. And now, we find ourselves in the present day, where the conflict has taken yet another tragic turn. Recent developments, including protests, violent clashes, and the threat of escalated military action, have brought the issue back into the global spotlight. The US continues to express support for Israel's right to self-defense, while facing growing calls to advocate for a ceasefire and humanitarian aid for Palestinians. The US's stance has evolved over the years, influenced by a complex mix of geopolitical, strategic, and ideological factors. Now, let's fast forward to the present day. The Israel-Palestine conflict has taken a new turn, with tensions escalating and the international community watching closely. Recently, we saw descendants of Holocaust survivors protesting in New York, demanding a ceasefire in Israel and condemning what they termed genocide against Palestinians. The protesters, including rabbis and Jewish New Yorkers, expressed their disapproval of the violence, asserting "not in our name." Meanwhile, the political landscape in the US is also echoing these complex sentiments. Former President Donald Trump has vowed to strip student visas from those he deems anti-Semitic foreigners at US colleges if he wins the 2024 election. This, of course, includes those who have expressed support for Palestinians and protested against Israel. President Joe Biden's administration, on the other hand, has been relatively silent on the matter. There's a push for Egypt to reopen its border to allow civilians to leave the war zone, but no word on whether there are plans to welcome a large number of Gazans into the US. As the conflict continues, students on US college campuses are facing scrutiny for their responses to the war, with some even losing job offers. In Israel, Naftali Bennett, the leader of the right-wing Yamina party, is on the verge of becoming the next prime minister. Despite his party's limited seats, Bennett has become a kingmaker, courted by both Netanyahu and Lapid. His right-wing views, including a desire to annex part of the occupied West Bank, are well known. Yet his potential coalition government includes a wide range of political parties, from far left to Arab Israeli. As we can see, the US's stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict remains a contentious issue, deeply rooted in history and fraught with political complexities. So, what have we learned about the US's stance on the Israel-Palestine conflict? It's clear that this issue is steeped in a rich historical context that has shaped the US's stance over time. From the early days of the conflict, the US has had a significant influence, often leaning towards supporting Israel. This support has been consistent, whether it's been through diplomatic backing or financial aid. The current scenario is no different. Despite calls for a ceasefire and protests from various sections of society, including descendants of Holocaust survivors, the US maintains its position. The US's stance is further complicated by domestic politics, with key figures like former President Trump vowing to deport anti-Semitic foreigners if he wins the next election. However, the situation is not black and white. There are differing views within the US itself, with some lawmakers pushing for humanitarian assistance for Palestinian civilians, suggesting a shift, albeit small, in the narrative. The stance of the US also has global implications, with countries like Egypt being pushed to open their borders to Gazan civilians. While it's a complex issue with no easy answers, understanding the historical context and current political landscape can provide important insights into the US's position on the Israel-Palestine conflict.